Good morning. At least we have a plan B. BT have let us down yet again. I have no idea what's going on with these big companies, but I think that basically they have just got so big that they're trying to offer services beyond their means. So forgive the plan B, because it's been looking a little rough, and us broadcasting on a different vehicle, if you like, which means anything can happen. Anything at all can happen, because we have no idea what this particular machine does. One thing I do know is that it wouldn't do the radio show. So let's get on with a little telly this morning. And okay, let's go with the. If we can find her, I was going to say let's go with. There she is, the lovely Annie.
Hello and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
Well, we're going to have to go with plan B this morning, because this certainly isn't working in the main system. If anybody can be unlucky, it's Mirador, but nonetheless, we're coming to the end of a cycle. So, have no idea what that is. Oh, I know what it is. It's that. Right, okay, there we go. We're coming to the end of a cycle, and we've put all sorts of things in place this week to make sure that these sort of things don't happen. And we do have an ambitious program coming up, as we've been saying to you. But let's go through the newspaper headlines first of all. And strangely enough, we thought it was all over, and unfortunately, we can't say now it is. because Hancock is making predictions of problems with the new India variant that has escaped the subcontinent and is here amongst us. And it's clever, this virus. It dodges all sorts of defenses. So do be careful. Do be careful still. Use the mask still, use the social distancing still. Let's try hard to meet the deadline of Monday when we can get some sort of normality back to our lives. But at the moment, it's hanging on a thread. And we always knew there were going to be some perils, but I hope this one doesn't kick in. But the government are warning, hang on, there's a variant here that is defying our best efforts to stop it. If you've had the jab, if you've had a vaccine, you stand a better chance of defense. If you haven't, watch out. And of course, what that does is it puts the whole idea of holidays abroad into some question. I say some question because we're not the experts. All we do is we report on what we see and what we're told. Now, I have to be very careful about that statement because good journalists don't just report what they're told. We check them out, we double check them. And in fact, a good journalist will triple check them from separate sources. So I've looked at various sources this morning, various newspapers and online. And sure enough, the story is being reported from many sources. So we have to be careful. Unusually, the Financial Times has taken the high spot today. And in fact, we are welcoming Stuart Dolby to our team. And he will have a program later on today, or perhaps in the new cycle on Monday morning, in which he will talk about energy issues. He's a former FT journalist. He's very heavily into energy, very knowledgeable. And the first thing he's going to talk about is the difference between the prices that we pay for energy and why. So the Financial Times is Cameron says Green Seal lobbying was for the benefit of the British economy. Aha, there you are. It's always for the benefit of somebody that we're doing all these naughty things. And of course, there is a philosophy that says that you can do bad things if good comes from it. You can do good things if bad comes from it. It depends which philosophical trend you take. And he's taking one is, well, I may have been naughty, but I was doing it for all you lot. You have to have good evidence to back up that sort of argument. And if you haven't, it sounds very hollow. It's back to the days, I know that this will upset some people, but when we were caned as children, and it didn't matter whether it was your father or whether it was a teacher, they would grit their teeth and say, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Yeah, like hell. But it's for your own good, my boy, your own good. Yes, like hell. It's done, and that's all you remembered about it. I don't know that it made you behave any better. So what he's saying is, look, don't worry. I was thinking of you all the time. Even though I was going to make a packet out of it, I was thinking of you all the time. The Metro. First of all, Harry takes aim at the Royals. So, but those of you who are Royal watchers had better watch out, because I think that Meghan has got Harry all steamed up again. Frankly, I think it's all getting very boring. If they want to go and live in California or whatever, go and live in California and make a new life and manage it the way it is. She seems to be doing well. She's writing children's stories. I believe that there's an actress role in the offing. All the things which she would have found impossible really to do here because of our different way of life and the different structure. Remember, a royal in the United States is just a royal. A royal here is part of our constitution. We don't have a fully written constitution, but we are a constitutional monarchy, and the Queen is head of state, and her family, therefore, are bound by certain rules, and those rules we have to follow. She has to follow, and the family has to follow if they want to be part of it. Well, now they buggered off to the States. They can do what they like. Nobody is telling anybody that they must behave in a particular way if the United States permits it and allows it, whether that's morally or as far as protocol is concerned. Nobody cares. But why it keeps on coming back here, I have no idea. And why she keeps, or they keep on taking a poke. Okay, if they want to take a poke at mummy, all families have rows. You know, sometimes mothers and fathers don't speak to one another for decades, years and years and years. But that's a row within the family, and keep it that way. Don't attack our head of state, the constitutional monarchy, unless you're a Republican, and God bless you if you are, because believe me, if we go the Republic way and we have an elected head of state, then we're in serious, serious trouble. But then some people might say, oh, come on, Keith, you haven't thought that one through. Yes, I have. I've thought it through very carefully. And in fact, I occasionally deliver courses on the constitutional monarchy. I don't do it all. I bring in colleagues who are experts, but I believe in the constitutional monarchy. I believe in the way it's constituted, and that it is the very best form of government that we can get. So leave us alone, Meghan, please, or leave the Queen alone, because she is our head of state, and our constitution demands that we have one. Well, the Guardian says, Cameron said, your reputation is in tatters after Greensill lobbying. So that's another story, a different story to the one. It's those of you who are still a bit bemused about Greensill. Essentially, it's a financial company, a big financial company, and it was supporting the steel industry here. And Cameron was hired to help get it some funds and pave the way for investment and so on and so forth. And he failed. And Greensill has collapsed, or at least it's gone downhill. So it's in serious trouble. And of course, what's happened now is people are saying that he called in favors. What he's saying, and some other people who are supporters are saying, is, no, hang on, it's quite normal to use your influence. And I suppose that's right. I suppose that if I owed the bank some money and I could go down to my local banker, I can't anymore, and say to him, Harry, you know me, I'm good old Keith, and so I say, well, I'm good for the money, but I'm not right now. And he would say, you're very well, Keith, you don't have the I don't have it anymore, because you say, hello, Harry, this is Keith. And he says, let me tap it into the computer. Bing, no, sorry. That's the way it is. But nonetheless, influence peddling, it starts at the bottom and it goes to the top. So in that sense, is influence illegal or immoral? And in this particular case, people are suggesting that it's illegal, but I suppose that'll have to work out in the wash. Right, the jabs blitz to save summer, says the Mirror. Fears of new curbs. Calls for all adults in variant hit areas to get the vaccine immediately to stop the spread. Now, it was inevitable that something would wash up on our shores, and everybody washed their hands and said, no. They may have a third wave on the continent, but it's going to be a ripple here, it won't hurt. Nobody gave much thought to what was happening in India. And in fact, the Indians themselves are in a bit of a problem, because they do have a president who, by all accounts, and I have to say by all accounts, I've never met the man, and it's too long ago that I've followed international affairs very closely for me to really comment accurately, but it appears that he's rather arrogant and doesn't take too much advice, and didn't take too much advice on the coronavirus, and that the virus must have been listening into one of his cabinet meetings, because it's a clever virus. So he decided to go around, as the Americans would say, go around tight end, which is a football team, a term to avoid the opposition. So the virus went around tight end and is creating havoc in India. And the fallout, the spillover, is hitting us. And if it hits us just at this right time, when everybody is getting refreshed and feeling good about coming out of lockdown, then I think that probably we'll pull the plug on the Indian subcontinent and let it sink. Okay, tongue in cheek, because somebody will have a go at me for saying things like that. It doesn't matter. I'm too old. Don't care. For being accused by youngsters of having isms and so on, say, well, I'm a meritocrat. Nobody has a more level playing field than me about ability and jobs and so on. Anyway, there we go. So we are in some danger, it appears. Yes, the Times is a race to stop the Indian strain. It is unfortunate that this is taking over. Just as we were all thinking, and particularly since even though we had to be outside a few decent days, and people were going to the pubs and the restaurants and sitting outside and enjoying themselves and remembering what it was like. And now, if suddenly it's whisked away again, I think I'm not sure that our structure in society can stand it. I think there might be an open rebellion. Damn it, let's see if it can get us. It's difficult to say, but let me say now, it isn't over yet, and we've got to be very careful. So when it comes to, in fact, one of the papers yesterday had two lady columnists say. One said, "Will they hug when it's allowed again?" And one said yes, and the other said no. And it was interesting to see the arguments as to why they would and why they wouldn't. Now, what I do hope is that this silly nonsense of when people meet is they semi-embrace. I mean, it's a bit silly, really, because it's false, blatantly so. And when you see people doing it, particularly in public, you think, oh, God, probably the daggers are out. Kiss and hug today, blood spilling tomorrow. Am I an old cynic? I'm an old cynic. Am I going to hug somebody? I want to hug him because it's sheer pleasure. So I've written to Miss World and offered a hug. I haven't had a reply yet, but that's the reason I'm going to hug anybody, is because it's very pleasant to hug them and nothing else. But anyway, should we hug or not? And let's hope that we get the opportunity. Vaccine surge for under 30, says the Eye, is possible in new hotspots. But of course, one of the things that it's very easy for somebody like me to rabbit on about things like jabs and variants and so on. I say, well, it's because I'm a little over 35. So I've qualified for the jab. In fact, I've qualified for 2 jabs. And not only that, but because I had to go to hospital the day before yesterday, I was tested, given the full test. They ram things down your throat and stick things up your nostril. Thank God the days have gone where they stick things up your bum. I mean, that was most uncomfortable. But I was given the whole test, and I'm okay. So I'm sitting pretty. But the jab, the vaccine, has been given from the top up. And I think that's right, from the top of the tier, that is the 80-year-olds, down to eventually everybody. But we're still in the process of making sure everybody gets a jab. And under 30s haven't necessarily been given it. Some have had it, some haven't. So what the Eye is saying is the possibilities for under 30s to get the vaccine is in these areas where there is evidence of the Indian variant, which is particularly vicious. Climb down over NHS online and phone triage. Now, I'm not quite sure what that story is about because I can only see the headlines. But I hope that somebody is beginning to question the use of online dealings with patients. First of all, it was said yesterday that the NHS had urged doctors to treat patients as much as they possibly can online. And I think that that's what the climb down is about, is the pressure has been on to say, hey, 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 this is getting out of hand. And it is getting out of hand. And I think that, Boris promised root and branch reform, or at least review of governance. And that includes the governance of the NHS. And thank God somebody somewhere in the NHS has had enough nous, enough sense to say, hey, come on, we've got a lot of people, elderly, yes, but there's an awful lot of people, that failed computer science at school. An awful lot of people that can't afford a computer. So the whole idea that we should be treated via the internet, for that matter, the phone is a whole middle class concept, isn't it? If you're too poor to have a computer, that's tough. And I at one time, you will recall, we had internet cafes, but I don't see them anymore. It's assumed that everybody has got a computer. Everybody's got a phone. Well, maybe they have, but some phones are just simply for making calls and taking calls. They're not the complicated and complex machines that some of us have, so that we can do almost anything on them. So the fact that the NHS has said deal online meant that a whole area, a whole sector of people that it's supposed to serve and look after were going to be denied. And at the moment, this whole idea of bigger is better is just turning into a travesty. I had to go to hospital the other day, and part of that was because I couldn't talk to a doctor. I actually hang on for 15 minutes to my surgery, where I've been for 40 years. I've been in that surgery for 40 years. And I get a lady, pleasant though she was, but she hadn't a clue who I was. In the old days, I would say, hello, Betsy. Hello, Liz. Not anymore. I discouraged from going into the doctor's surgery anyway. And secondly, because of this collection into a bigger and better surgery, I haven't a clue. There's 20 of them taking calls. And even though there are 20 of them taking calls, you're still in a queue for about 20 minutes. And nobody is paying the bill on the phone except you. So you sit only to be told, oh, well, I'm terribly sorry, but there's no way a doctor can see you today or talk to you on the phone. They're all booked up. It'll be late tomorrow, but I'm dying. I'll call 111. Well, I actually did call 111. And they said, hold on. Well, actually, I take it back. Yes, they did. They said, hold on. And then I was immediately disconnected. And then I looked on the web, mind you, I could, but there are many that couldn't if they were cut off like that. And it said there is a deathly serious section at your local hospital, the cottage hospital. So I tried them. I got cut off before I ever got anywhere near first base. In the end, I had to resort because I couldn't walk, right? Doesn't matter why, I'm perfectly all right now, anybody who's concerned, but I couldn't walk. And what happened is the 999 team turned up and they looked after me. I got first class treatment from the two girls in the ambulance. Yeah, it was an ambulance. I carted off to hospital. I saw a doctor within, if I'd have waited for the surgery, I'd have been lying on the floor for a couple of days. I saw a doctor at the hospital before 10 o'clock. I remember looking at my watch. And it was deemed that I should be kept in overnight for some tests and so on and so forth. And indeed, they discovered 2 or 3 things that needed putting right in my mechanism. And they have done that. They've attended to it. Whereas if I'd have gone through the normal surgery procedure, which I much prefer, I like talking to my own doctor. But even my own doctor, I was given a dedicated doctor. If I want to see my dedicated doctor, I've got to wait for 4 weeks. Now, that dedicated doctor was a first-class doctor. She is a first-class doctor. She's still there at the surgery. She's a lovely lady, and we got to the point where we were able to joke a little and josh a little, and she understood where I was coming from, and she knew a little bit about me. There are very good doctors there, but since it's hit and miss, they know nothing about me whatsoever, except what they can read on the screen. And I've spoken to a former head of a surgery here, who is now retired, and he said he doesn't approve of what's happening with this bigger is better, because medicine is a lot about being able to read your patient and knowing who they are and what they are, and that adds to the treatment factor, and that's disappearing. It's disappeared. Actually, one doctor did admit that he knew who I was because I'm a loudmouth, and they keep an eye on what I'm saying. But that's hardly a reason. That's in fact, that's no reason at all, because that applies just to me, not to everybody. And if a doctor is going to forge a good patient relationship, they've got to look them in the eye. They've got to look at the color of their skin, and their mood and their temperament. And we keep on rabbiting on about the mentally ill. And I've had a lot to do with the mentally ill, a lot to do. And I know more about it than some of these bloody experts do, believe me, because I've been there, I've experienced it, trial and error, and knowing what the reactions are likely to be. The doctors don't. All they read is a bit of paper. And somebody who is beaming from ear to ear one moment can actually break your nose the next. I'm not being unkind, but that's the way that it can happen. So if in fact they actually see online or whatever, or somebody they've never seen before, even if they see them in person and they're beaming, that's what they see. They have no sense of who they're talking about and may never see that person again. So there's an awful lot in our society that has got to it's got to be changed. And don't get me on the homeless at the moment, because I'm homeless. It's no, I've got a roof over my head, but I have been homeless, and I know what the system is now. And I feel sorry for those people who aren't able to defend themselves, who aren't able to kick up a fuss. I don't blame the local council, and in some ways, when it comes to the business side of things, the local council have been quite good. But on the social side of things is when they see people like me coming, they duck. Well, that's no training, you know. I may be difficult, I may be ornery, but at least I'm articulate. Excuse me if I cough. Nothing wrong with it, just a little cough. And they shouldn't have to duck, but they do. And so, believe me, for those people who don't have some of the, shall I say, skills that I've got, if that doesn't sound too pompous, but a lot of people don't have either social skills, or some of them left school when they were 13, or couldn't actually grasp some of the things they're taught at school, but yet have become very good at other things. Actually, half our business geniuses never got past what they call grade 8 or whatever. They can knock us into a cocked hat in making a fortune. So I'm not having a go at anyone in particular, but there are people who simply cannot look after themselves, and to duck and dive for those is just not good enough. I'm going to do 2 programs in the coming weeks on both those issues, because now I feel that as a journalist, I'm not an investigative journalist. Somebody said to me, "Are you an investigative journalist?" Well, I think every journalist has to be investigative to some extent, but I'm not an investigative journalist in the true sense of the word. I mean, those guys are really very daring guys, and not only that, they risk their family and they risk their lives to try and root out really very serious issues. And I mean, a few years ago, it was nursing home bullying, is where people actually pretended to journalists, investigative journalists, got into these places pretending to be either carers or patients, and it was blown wide open. Nobody would have known otherwise. Nobody. So they are really do a fantastic job. There are too few of them. But I'm not one of them. But what I do say is I have experienced an awful lot. And what I do is I base my opinions on experience. Now, if I come up against a politician, they wipe the floor with me because they are trained debaters. That doesn't mean to say they know anything. They just know how to argue. And I really don't really know how to argue. I don't put my thoughts in that way. But what I do know is that I've been there and I've done that and I've seen it and I know what the reality is. And now I've experienced homelessness. I know what the reality is. And I've lived with serious medical health problems, mental health problems for 5 years. And not only that, 3 or 4 other friends have had similar experiences and we share them. So we know about that. And when we read and hear some of the things that are said, it makes my blood curdle. There's very little lack of understanding. And the police are not happy at all. They're called to arbitrate in many instances when, as I say, they haven't been trained to do that. So there is a root and branch reform needed in the mental health sector. For God's sake, we spend £12.2 billion on it. All right. So I'm quite sure that some of it is spent on institutions where people are dangerous and have to be kept under control. But if we're going to actually boast that we look after our mentally ill people, and that it's beginning to grow because of COVID, then let's do it, not just say it. It doesn't take a lot of money to train various people. It doesn't take a lot of money, for instance, to train people in the supermarket. So that instead of just calling security and having somebody thrown out because they're being awkward and difficult because of mental aberrations, is that they should be trained to deal with it. And there's no reason why the supermarkets make enough out of us that they can't actually train their personnel at their expense, as long as they've got guidance on how they should be trained. But there we are. There we are. I'm being naughty. The Daily Mail, just how low can Harry go? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. The Mail is interesting. I mean, first of all, a lot of people sort of sneer, oh, you're a Mail reader. What they really mean is you have a political viewpoint different to me. Because we all read newspapers or like newspapers, depending on our political point of view. And those people who sneer at Daily Mail readers are obviously not very democratic. They really don't believe in democracy. They want to sneer and sort of say, that's your sort of, every viewpoint, as long as it's not extreme, should be tolerable in a democratic society. Should be. But anyway, the Mail, who always very usually would support government and get a lot of flack from those people who read the Guardian, for instance, and read the Mirror, who are of a different political persuasion, and that's okay. It's okay. They think differently. They have a different philosophy. But normally they would attack the Mail because it would support a Conservative government. Well, the Mail has had a bigger go at the Conservative government this time around than any of the others put together. So it just shows that it has got some sense of independence. But it is saying just how low can Harry go. And I will read that article myself in some interest. Where are we? 12 minutes past 8. My goodness me, where does the time go? Well, it goes quickly for me because I'm rabbiting on, and I'm sure that I'm boring the hell out of you, but it doesn't matter. This is Friday, and we're getting through where, once again, we didn't get much joy out of our technical people. So here I am, right in the middle of it. So it is better, I think, that we just finish off the day looking at the news, and Harry really, and his wife, as I said at the top, when other newspapers have said, look, he's having a go, it's getting beyond the pale, because she is behaving like a spoiled brat. But that's only an opinion of an Englishman about an American. And Americans have a different way of life. It's Churchill said, two great nations separated by a common language. In other words, we understand the words that we put with it, but we don't understand the temperament. I've lived in North America for 15 years, not in the United States, although I've worked in the United States. I lived in Canada, and the Canadians think, in many ways, much like the Americans, or they would say that they don't. North Americans think differently, based on their history, their culture, their education, and all the things that make up their civil society, just as we do. And we are totally different. So when I say this lady is poking at the British institutions and the royal family and so on, she's doing it from an American point of view. Well, we have to understand that. It means nothing. She has no understanding whatsoever. And if you're going to marry into a different, well, let me put it this way. I have a lot to do with Russians, or have in the past, and I've maintained many friendships. And there are a number of marriages, because of international relations and so on, that take place between either Brits and Russians and Americans and Russians. And most of them don't last, because while the initial sentiment is love and affection and beauty and understanding and everything is new and different, is eventually the differences of culture creep in, and they're very difficult to satisfy. Now you're going to say, "Oh, Keith, you're getting into all sorts of areas that you shouldn't." Well, no, I'm not. As I say, I have a lot to do with experience. My wife was Canadian, very Canadian. She's very proud of her heritage. And me, I'm an old, let's salute Brit. And we had our differences. We were sensible enough and deep enough, and the affection was there to sort them out. Well, a lot of people that get married from different cultures don't. And I don't think that Meghan has made any attempt whatsoever to understand where Harry came from. And he has been silly enough not to try to work at it. So there, how's that for an opinion? Based on the fact that my daughter, she is proud in two areas. First of all, I went to Northern Ireland as a journalist when she was 11, and she grew up there, and so she married there, and she is proud of her Northern Ireland background. But she is deeply proud of her Canadian heritage, and she's passed that on to my two grandsons. They're very, very proud of the fact that they are from Northern Ireland. They're very proud of the fact that they're Brits, and they also are very proud of the fact that they've got Canadian heritage, and they actually carry Canadian passports. And they stay in touch with their Canadian relatives. Now, it can work, and if anybody at the top should try to make it work, it's these two, for all sorts of reasons. So a lot of people now are really going to have my throat. I love red herrings. I love veering down a different path. But when I say there are a lot of people who want a noose in my neck, there's one. He passed on just a couple of years ago. Old Fred. And I used to go and help throw the papers in at the local news agents in the morning, because he got me up at 5 o'clock ready to go and do my journalistic bit. And so there were three of us who, all, I suppose I would say they were old guys. They were older than me, but I was getting to be an old guy by then. And we would take the papers in, and we would sort them out and so on, and we would help our a good friend who was the manager there, and lay out the papers. I was about to name him, but then that would have named the shop, and I'm not sure I should do that. Anyway, I was talking to to Fred. And for instance, he said, I would ask him questions, and I said, Fred, did Lewis suffer at all in the Second World War? And he laughed and he said, well, the whole of the North Quarter, as it's known, it was bombed. And he said, my brother, when a bomb dropped in Lewis, my brother was in Plumpton and it knocked him out of bed. So we sometimes don't understand what was the history, what was surrounding us. And I really lost my plot now because I'm wondering. But what I am worried about is the Harry Meghan thing and what effect it might have. And that, in fact, what they should do is get their act together and start to understand that they are a mixed marriage. And mixed marriages need much more work if they're going to be successful. And many, many mixed marriages are successful. Don't misunderstand. Well, I'm mixed marriage myself. So it doesn't bode well. I mean, I've had two lovely friends, female friends, and they are only friends because they are much younger than me. And the friendship creaked frequently because they were not born here and I was, and we would get down to certain issues and we didn't see things eye to eye at all. So we yelled at one another. No, we weren't so uncivilized that we hit one another. But it got pretty heavy, I'll tell you. And this mixture of cultures. There are big differences. And in this particular case, I'm rabbiting on about it a little bit, but I really do think that Harry and Meghan should have made much more effort. And what they're saying is that the royal family and the British establishment didn't make the effort. Well, they've been around for a long time. I'm just looking at the time here. It's 8:20. For those of you who catch a bus in time with me, you're not going to catch a bus as well in time with me, I'll tell you. But, the sort of thing that they're doing, if you like, not working on the idea that they were a mixed marriage. They knew they were a mixed marriage, but on top of that, she was Hollywood, and with all those people that talk about pomp and ceremony, our pomp and ceremony is actually part of our establishment. We do it for a purpose as well as glitz. Oh yeah, I'm not saying that the changing of the guard and the horse guards parade and the bands and all the things that go with our military and with our parliament and so on and so forth, don't attract a lot of people because of their ceremonial attributes. They do, but they are there for a purpose. Whereas Hollywood is Hollywood. It's only there to make movies, and you have to understand the difference between the approach. I remember once a niece of mine came to Lewis on a little, not a world tour, but she was traveling, and she brought her boyfriend with her. And during the conversation, I made reference to the fact that American royalty was really the film stars. And he bridled. He was really quite upset at that. But when we actually started to talk, he couldn't tell me who they were. Certainly not the Trudeaus. Although his father, Justin Trudeau and Margaret Trudeau, tried that. They were sort of the glamorous couple. It soon fell apart when he began some of his social practices, particularly when it came to the English-French divide in Canada. And that's a divide that most people think has been resolved, and it hasn't. Anyway, I've kept myself going for 22 minutes because this is Plan B. And Plan B, I'm sure if you tapped in for 2 or 3 minutes, that was plenty. You don't want to go any further. Oh, Harry, Dad passed his pain on to me. I will not do that to my kids. I mean, it all sounds like rationalization, doesn't it? If you want to be a good father and a good mother, you can be one. We've all got pain. We've all got stuff in our backgrounds that hurt us. Well, whether it was bullying at school or whether it was a failure at something that we wanted to achieve, or whether indeed it was that you had parents who didn't care. We've all got pain. But you don't publicly say, I'm not going to pass that on to my children. You get on with it. I think that I've got a very nice family as a result. Probably as a result of my wife rather than me, but nonetheless, I managed to fit in there somewhere. So I'm really not terribly, I personally, am not terribly sympathetic to what's going on. Now, there are thousands that are. And there are millions of Americans that think we Brits are just awful with the way that we're treating Meghan. So it is all a matter of opinion. And why it should be kicked around publicly like football, I have no idea. Faster jabs, says the Daily Express, for millions to combat variant. Once again, that's what I started to talk about. We really do have to still be on our guard. Make sure when you go out today that you do carry your mask. Yeah, they're a pain in the bum. They really are. I keep forgetting, and I'm halfway there, and I have to put on my mask. But I put it on. It's only memory, not deliberate avoidance of putting it on. So try your hardest to follow the rules a little while. Stay socially distant. Those of you who want to rush up and kiss me, resist the temptation. Hugging and kissing have got to wait. I'll resist the impulse too. But quite seriously, if this Indian variant takes hold, it's going to put us right back to square one. So there's no sense in not being just cautious. I don't think that Monday is going to be Monday. It's all going to lift. There's not going to be a clampdown over the weekend. But we can either treat it sensibly, or we can treat it as, hold it all, here we are, we can do anything we want. Well, just be cautious. We've gone through 12 months of pain, more than 12 months, and has it been painful? Yes, it has. And if you're talking about experience, most people have suffered huge pain of various sorts. Parents dying where the children couldn't see them, grandparents not seeing their grandchildren, people in old folks' homes not being able to get outside. We've gone through all sorts of trauma, and we've borne it. We've got through it. Let's not either increase it or have it reinstated in a much more powerful way because of a powerful enemy, a powerful virus that is coming back to hit us from the subcontinent. That's enough, I think, for this morning. The Daily Star. Do your bit for Britain. 124 pints and a packet of crisps, please, are its headlines. And actually, I have to say that on Monday, I am going to go out and I'm going to have a pint in a pub. I don't care whether I have to wait and queue to get in. I have been having a little beer here and there, sitting outside a restaurant, and it's pleasant, as long as the weather is pleasant. But I said to somebody the other day when we were sitting outside and it was freezing cold and I was shivering, this is so typically British. We used to pack off to the pub, to the beach, and we would sit and have a picnic with the wind blowing and the spray coming in from the sea, and it cold and miserable, and all huddled together, saying we were having a jolly good time having a picnic. We were not to be denied. That picnic was going to take place. And it was a bit like that. It's here. Isn't it nice to have a beer? The crazy Brits, mad dogs and Englishmen, go out in the midday sun. Indeed, we do. And mad dogs we may be. But I'm still glad that I'm part of this country. It is a crazy country. It's a frustrating country. It can you can tear your hair out what some of our leaders do, but we are still able to criticize. And if you don't understand that freedom, believe me, go and live in an authoritarian regime where if you smile, a policeman may think that you're a conspirator. If you do anything unusual, you will be clamped down on and not given the freedom to think and to challenge the way that we are here. I had one colleague in Romania when I was there, and this was before they joined the EU, after Ceausescu, but before the EU. And she wore purple hair. And she was a woman of some 45 years of age, which didn't quite fit. The reason she wore purple hair was in the days of Ceausescu, they were absolutely unable to do anything untoward. So they had to let other people know who were dissidents. So they wore coloured hair, and then they knew who each other were. And the authorities were so out of touch with what's happening in the West because Ceausescu, of all dictators, was so successful in cutting off any communication in and out of the country because they had no idea that they thought they were just mad fashion followers. They had no idea that they were letting one another know that they were dissenters, that they were rebellious, and that in some cases they were underground. So there we are. That's 124 pints and a packet of crisps, please. Thank you. That's British. So is democracy. So is freedom to be able to say half the rubbish that I've been spouting this morning. But I have the right to do it, and you have the right to do it, and you stick with it and you fight for it. Right? Right. So there we are. That's it for this week. A totally different format, which we've experimented with this week, and it's come a bit unstuck. But we would much rather rehearse in front of you rather than and try things out in front of you, rather than just shut off for the week, because there are too many interesting things that are going on. We pass on a little here and a little there. We get boring here, but sometimes we're exciting there. And I hope that you'll join us next week as we start to expand what we're doing with some rather exciting things and working towards Jane Watkins and the Mirador pub. Won't be open until towards the end of, well, the beginning of June, actually. But at least it is in the process now of being built. So looking forward to a pint with you eventually, but certainly a little look at things in a different light and a different way, and a little better way, I think, next week. Do join me then. Toodle pip, as they say. Toodle pip.